Welcome to All Right in Sin City, a podcast about writers and writing in the Windsor, Detroit region. Your podcasters today are
Irene Moore Davis, author, educator, and local historian.
Sarah Jarvis, former bookseller, publishing rep, and literary festival chair.
and me, Kim Conklin, Windsor-based writer and filmmaker.
Our featured guest today is Vanessa Shields. Vanessa Shields is a poet, writer, and workshop facilitator in Windsor, Ontario. Her first book, Laughing Through a Second Pregnancy, a memoir, was published by Black Moss Press in 2011 to rave reviews. In 2013, Shields edited a poetry anthology entitled Whisky Sour City, I Am That Woman. Her first book of poetry was published in 2014. Look at Her in 2016, and in 2017, Shields was part of a group of 7 poets published in an anthology about the history of Windsor titled Because We Have All Lived Here, and those were all with Black Moss Press. In 2018, the chapbook Feminism, Revisit, Revise, Revolutionize, a 2-part harmony, was published by the League of Canadian Poets Feminist Caucus, with Shields as co-editor and introduction writer. She writes a monthly blog for the League of Canadian Poets on being a writing parent. She's passionate about promoting poetry and the writing life, and is often on a jury for major awards and/or contests. Vanessa self-published a collection of children's poetry, From A to Zifri Zanks, with Windsor illustrator Glenn Hawkes in 2019. A new collection of poetry, Thimbles, has just been published by Palimpsest Press. Welcome to the show, Vanessa, or welcome back to the show, Vanessa.
Thank you for having me. Oh my God, I'm like tired just listening to that long list, but thank you.
It's all very impressive.
I'm like, me? Oh, thank you. I appreciate
it's all
it.
you. It's all you, and we are in awe of what you do. So in your work, you're always so open and honest about your life and your poetry. And this work really digs deep into a celebration and expression of grief for your grandmother, this particular work, Thimbles. If you can, tell us how it wouldn't just take one poem in a collection, say, to honor her, but a whole collection unto itself.
Wow, that's a really, really great question. I think because the more that I sat down with her and asked her about her life, the more I realized just how vast and incredible her life was. And so it really, at that point, became impossible for me to just say one thing about her. Not that the people who are in our family sometimes can be one-dimensional, but certainly when we're growing up and we're little kids, you know, people in our lives have roles that we don't really question. They just sort of show up and like feed us and love us and play games with us or whatever they kind of do. And it wasn't until I was an adult, like literally, you know, a few years ago, that I started to consider my grandmother as this, you know, multi-dimensional human being who had this incredible past, as well as the now that we were in. And because she was ill, there was this very scary future ahead of us too. So it was like, because we could exist in these like 3 parts, I think that's for sure why there's no way to just put everything into one poem. There's just too much to feel, too much to learn, certainly too much to have to face, to let go of, and just a whole whack of stuff for grief to throw on top of you too. But yeah, that's a good question. And it's not a simple answer because of, you know, the complication of what it is, or the complicatedness rather of what it is to be human. And I really learned so much about my grandmother in her last 3 years of life. And that's what I wanted to share with everyone, and also my family and my children, so that there's something tangible that we have that talks about who she was and her legacy, for sure.
In your poetry, you chronicle your grandmother's or your Nana's journey towards the end of life in 2020, but the first section also deals with your grandmother's very early life. Did you work on those poems all at once, or had you been building on this for a while?
No, those came out all at once. So the original manuscript, the very first manuscript that I submitted, was in 3 parts, and my Nona's poems were 1 part of 3. So Amy, bless her, when she said she was interested in publishing me, she said, I really only am interested in the poems about your Nona. So that was like 1/3 of the thing. So we got rid of 50%, no, 75%. I don't do math. We got rid of a whole bunch basically. And so I sort of had to start fresh. And so at that point, I looked at what I had, and working with Abby Rowlands, who was my wonderful editor, we sat and talked just a lot about what we wanted the story to be. And at that point, that's also when I started interviewing my grandmother and realized that, you know, she had so much to share about her past. And so as those interviews transpired and I took notes, that's when the bulk of those poems were written. And they were written just like on paper. I have it with me to show you, like just, you know, stacks of handwritten. I'd interview her, and then I'd come home and I'd be like in a fury of writing to try and remember what she told me, and then try and make sense of how to organize her past and find its place in the book. When we started, we weren't really thinking too much about chronology, but the more that I learned about my grandmother's life, the more we realized, oh man, we have to put this stuff in, because this is how we find the roots of her legacy, you know, where her spirit really began. So yes, they did kind of come later on in the process in a big bulk.
So what was it like to be working on this during the pandemic? Would it have been completed in the same way without the lockdowns?
So we were pretty deep into the editing process when the pandemic hit. Ooh, sounds like a scary movie. And so I the only thing that really would have changed is I would have been face to face with Abby. However, she got accepted to go to school in Montreal also during the process. So physically, at some point, she wouldn't have been here because she would have been in Montreal. So our relationship still would have had to have some kind of virtual experience to it. And that, because we were so far along, didn't change, you know, the love and the challenge and the communication or anything like that that we had already kind of established previous to it. It's weird promoting virtual things. I can say that. Like, I feel like I'm annoying people when I'm saying, like, click on this link and click on that link. And just because we're so much online now, social media is really, I fight a lot with my feelings on social media. So that part is weird. But no, the actual editing process and working together, I think we would have had to have that element in there anyway, because Abby went away to school.
In one line in a poem, the narrator speaks to us directly and talks about, it's my responsibility to tell her story. So biographical works can be kind of tricky with respect to memory. Why did you feel it was important to include that declaration?
Definitely in honor of my grandmother. I think she, in as much as her spirit was so alive and so bright, and her laughter was large and her physicality was large, and she took up a lot of space, she didn't declare a lot of her own self. And I feel like saying those kind of strong statements out loud are in part for her to speak what I think that a lot of her life she was saying inside but didn't say out loud. So it's to speak for her from a part of her soul that I think existed and didn't get to speak. For myself to remind myself to be that way for my own legacy and beliefs, and also for my children to know that they, you know, I want them to be declarative in what they believe in and what their purpose is too. So probably a little bit of a trifecta there.
Well, speaking of trifectas, this is divided into what seems like 3 cantos.
Yeah.
2 with titles in Italian, and I'm going to destroy the pronunciation and apologize and have you correct me.
I won't be much better, don't worry.
Okay, so why did you choose un bacchén d'amore and domani è un altro giorno?
Yep.
What do these words mean, and how do they connect with your work?
Okay, so Un bacin d'amor comes from the first poem. So there's a bridge in the small town that she was born in called Ponte Vecchio, Old Bridge, basically what it means in Italian. And there's a saying that's like in a plaque on there that in Italian or in English translates to, on the bridge of Bassano, we will hold hands and we'll share a kiss of love. So bacin d'amor means kiss of love. So the first section, it's in Italian A because it's about her history and she's Italian and that's her culture and where she came. She came from Italy. And I kind of borrowed that from that piece on the plaque. And then she always used to say, tomorrow is another day. So the second or third section, I should say, domani è un altro giorno, that is that in Italian. So tomorrow is another day. And that, God, there's so many layers to that particular sentence that, you know, speaks to her saying that, her legacy from before, but also the fact that, like, what are we going to do when she's gone? Tomorrow's still going to come. So, and yeah, and that choosing to put the Italian in there is really just an homage to her culture and the language. And she always spoke Italian, although she spoke English very well as well. But the language of Italian was very, very important and a huge part of her life and her, like, her everyday. She never didn't stop speaking Italian. So.
Vanessa, in this collection, some parts are set in verse, some are prose, some are one line only. How did you choose the style and meter for this work?
Really, I think it was about how much there was to say, telling her story of who she was in Italy, who she was before she got married, who she was when she immigrated. There's so much to say. I mean, there were more poems that didn't get in there. So I think it was literally just the amount of information and story. And as kind of time moved on, there seemed like there was just less and less to say, or less and less that I was able to communicate, simply because of grief and the silence that can be attached to that. And so the fact that there's these big, long, some of them are like 3-page poems at the beginning, going to these teeny tiny little bits at the end is because I just didn't know what to, I didn't know what to say. The words just couldn't come. And there was a lot of silence in the building of that last section of the book, a lot of crying, a lot of just raw emotion that I didn't know how to use words to communicate, except in the ways that showed up. That beautiful one line though, poem, that's it. Poem, one line, I guess I don't know if that's a poem. We can call it a poem, but that one line is about my Nona saying, if God didn't think it was special, he would have put your vagina on your neck. And that comes from a couple of poems that speak to our kind of really intimate relationship with our bodies and just things she taught me about growing up and cleanliness and my own physical self that I didn't realize how important they were until, you know, again, looking back and realizing how much she had taught me. But that one line also speaks to her comedy. Like, she had a great sense of humor and she was a very devout Catholic woman. So, you know, God and the Lord came up all the time and we would just laugh and laugh. And she would say that line a lot, just about, you know, it just shows her comedy and her sense of humor but also her kind of wisdom too. Like, you know, to know that certain parts are to be protected. And I mean, there's a lot that I didn't write about her relationship with my grandfather that could have also spoken more to that kind of world of sexuality and all of those things in sex, but I didn't feel it was right in the end to include those things. But that line packs a big punch because of what it says and because of what it doesn't.
Okay, well, not to give away any spoilers, but the last section of the book is structured like a call and response, almost liturgically, like a psalm.
Yeah.
Is this more of a formal lament than religious structure, or was it sort of a deliberate invocation? Is that what you were going for there?
That particular poem that is a psalm was a like deliberate kind of conversation to God and the way that we had our religious connection. Like, I used to go to church all the time with my grandparents, and they would have these like really quick half an hour length masses in Italian, and I had have no idea what they were saying, but I would love when they would sing the Psalms and they would sing the songs. And so because that was a part of something that we shared on a religious line, my Nona and I, that's one reason why I wrote that. And also to kind of play with that and say, you know, spiritually outside of religion or religion inside of spirituality, you know, I wanted to kind of call out to that whole part and saying like, when I die, this is what I want. So in whatever realm that I will be when I die, spiritually or, you know, organized religion wise, that's the kind of song that I'm putting out there. But yeah, religion does play throughout, and that was conscious, and that's because it was a huge part of who she was and her life and her relationship with my grandfather as well.
In your busy world, you keep a regular blog. Have you been able to work on other writing forms during this time of writing work? It must have been very hard on you emotionally as well. So how do you keep your work time organized with all that?
I have to say I'm pretty disciplined with that. This year, anyway, I'm writing a poem a day. So my day starts with a poem typically. And so there's about an hour blocked off to write that and post it up. But after this was done and after my Nona passed, because when we started the book, I didn't know she was going to pass away during the writing of it. So when that happened, we were still like, we were nearing the end of the editorial process, but there was time then to write that part out. And when that was done, I didn't write a poem for a very long time. I just couldn't do it. Any kind of poem, kid poem, haiku, I just couldn't do it. My heart was too busted, and I need my heart to write, which I learned very much during that process. So I didn't write for a long time after that. I get teary just thinking about it. And it was very hard to go back to writing poetry. But I started a novel, a YA novel, and I started adapting a friend's book into a screenplay, and I busied myself in other genres, read a ton. But yeah, I took a break from writing poetry because it just hurt too much. And now I feel much better. And now actually I'm not sure what I want to work on next. I'm struggling the other way, which is new for me. Usually I have lots of ideas and I kind of feel confident with what I at least know what I'm going to write about, but I don't know now. This was such a different book for me than my previous books. So I'm sort of stuck in this I don't know stage right now. But discipline and writing every day, I kind of got that down. So that's not something that is a challenge for me. I know that I will be able to write every day. Some days I write longer than others. Some days I'm working on my novel, and some days every morning I'm working on a poem, and I'm hoping helping with my practice and my craft. That's a really long answer, sorry, but there you go.
Tell us about the title of this work, Thimbles. Where did that come from? And you know, we've noticed that sewing is literally threaded all the way through this collection. So tell us about that.
Okay, so my Nona was a brilliant seamstress. She started sewing when she was in grade 5. I think that's like age 10, really young, very young. And so as I started writing, I did lots of research on sewing and the language of sewing, and just to learn about it, to know what she knew in her heart, but also, you know, to realize very quickly that this is a theme that I could thread through, throughout the whole thing. And Thimble singular was the title for almost right up till the end, until I got the courage up to ask my Nona, could I have her thimble? I didn't say when you die, but that's what we knew. And so she said, of course. I went to look for it, and there were 2 sitting there together. And that was a, you know, angel singing in opera moment for me. And there were 2 thimbles there. Then we added the S, and now there's 2 thimbles that kind of carry through the whole book. But also, really, it's part of more of the homage to her legacy as a seamstress, which started when she was a child. And so it was really important to kind of keep that in throughout. And I had all these like crazy sketches and, you know, sketches that I had made with, you know, thimbles as part of everything. Like, here's a thimble Christmas tree. here's a thimble in a brain, like at the base of a brain. So I had all these like wild versions and ideas of how I was going to get the thimble really, sutured into the whole thing. And then, we also thank God for editors who say, whoa, we need to calm down. There's way too much here. And I had quotes of Thimbles at the bottom of each page. And it was just like a lot. So it's definitely transformed itself from the beginning. But the thimble itself, what it is and what it does really is a really wonderful personification of Nona. Like, this protects, right? So the fact that she used it to protect herself when she was sewing, and often many times the needle would go right through, she'd hurt herself. And just, its function of protection and also holding, it protects and it holds. And she very quickly, I realized the metaphor that was attached to it, that she really was the thimble of all the pieces of things that exist in the sewing world. She was the thimble that held us together and protected us, protected herself. And it's pretty and beautiful. And she used it all the time. So those are all the reasons why the thimble is the title.
Yeah, thimbles come in different sizes too, don't they?
Yeah.
I have the image of Elliot, measuring his life out in coffee spoons.
Yes, beautiful, exactly.
Same idea.
Yep. And they're from, like, the history of thimbles goes way back, and then people collect them. Like, you can get porcelain thimbles, like spoons. If you go to each city, you can get a spoon, but you can get a thimble too. It's pretty wild, the culture of thimbles themselves.
You mentioned that you're at a place where you're not really sure what you want to write next because this book was so different. What else did you learn about yourself as a writer and your writing through this project, because it was such a stretch?
I think my courage shifts. And what I mean by that is, like, what I have the courage to say and write about. When I look back at my first two poetry books, sometimes I go, oh my God, like, not what were you thinking? Because obviously I knew what I was thinking when I was writing it, but like some of the things I was writing about were just like so bold and just different parts of courage, like very clearly different me at those different times. I feel like this book is much more mature than those other two books. And so I learned that I can do that, that I can write without hiding behind humor or flash or vagina, although I got my vagina poem in here. You're welcome. That's important. So I think it's just different kinds of courage. And I'm always challenging myself to do that, to be brave in a different way. And can I be brave if I'm writing about someone else who I know at this point? Can I be brave if I do have an idea that I'm kicking around for a new collection, but it's not about me or anybody I know. And that terrifies me. I don't know if I can pull out the same kind of vulnerability if I'm writing about a person who I've never met before and never will. So I think definitely writing poetry has roots in courage. And for me, it's wanting to stay on top of that courage and moving with it as it flows. But this needed a whole new, different kind of courage to write than my other stuff.
Would you like to read some of your new work for our listeners?
Sure. I think I'll take us back to her when she was little. This poem is called Ins and Outs of Days, and I'll read it and then I can talk a little bit about it afterwards. Ins and outs of days are rigid in small town northern Italy, caked with mud and hunger. Young Maria pleads for an egg at the general store. She walks home with it in her navy wool coat pocket, a delicate secret on her hip. Things die, birds, cats, sisters. An illness sneaks into Maria's thriving mind, another delicate secret she can feel on her hip. Sickness in the head is worse than poverty. Maria is sent to the house in the mountains. It is as real as the open air windows, as real as sisters with the same name, as real as fathers who come and go like bee stings, as real as an egg in a navy wool coat pocket. In the mountains, Maria's mind is a dress shop, a riveting assembly of delicate designs, patterned secret seeds entrenched in fresh air, frolic, and misunderstood freedom. She can go in and out of the house with the open air windows in the mountains anytime she wants. Often, she leaves her body with her sisters while her mind mends rips in dead soldier sweaters. Sickness in the head is a navy wool coat pocket, a germinating seed, a polka dot dress, a delicate egg. So my Nona told me this story about having to walk with her little sisters to the store and pretty much beg for food, like one egg. Sometimes they would have an exchange, but sometimes they didn't. And she would get sent to just go and try and get food. So that was one part of the story there. Another one was that she had this big wool coat. And one day she was walking and she put her hand in her pocket and she thought she felt a spider or something, like it freaked her out. So she would tell me that story and laugh and just say like how scared she was walking with this coat and not knowing what was in his pocket. Another layer to that was the fact that she suffered from severe anxiety and depression. And at that time, they didn't have a name for that. They didn't know how to deal with it at all. And so their way of dealing with it was to send her to this woman who lived in this big house with no windows in the mountains. But for her, she thought that was like vacation and a gift. She didn't understand that they were sending her away because they didn't know how to deal with her anxiety, and didn't want, people to see or know that they had a child who suffered from whatever they were calling it. So she loved going up there and felt free and peaceful, and would then be able to make her anxiety, disappear or quiet for a while. So all of those things are wrapped into that poem. And it speaks to her delicacy that she often, hid under the thimble that she kind of covered herself in as an adult. But really inside she did have anxiety and she did suffer from depression. It's changed a lot over the years, certainly how we understand that and how we cope with it and how we can help each other with it. But she didn't have that when she was a kid.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful tribute to her.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us and for sharing your thoughts and ideas about your writing. Thanks, Vanessa Shields.
Thanks for doing this. You guys are the best. All Right in Sin City is so awesome. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that's lovely.
Thanks for joining us. Look for more episodes of All Right in Sin City wherever you listen to podcasts, or check out our website, allrightinsincity.com. For information and announcements of new podcasts, sign up to our email list or follow us on Facebook and Twitter.